welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really trying to tackle something important. It's one of the most deeply ingrained ideas in our society.
Right.
This idea that to be successful, to be a leader, you have to be loud.
Yeah.
You have to be charismatic. You have to be an extrovert.
And we're here to really question that. We're doing a deep dive into the power of quiet and how our world's obsession with what we can call the extrovert ideal is. It's not just flawed, it's actively holding back a huge amount of talent.
Yeah, it's more than just, a preference for a quiet library over a loud party. This is structural.
It is. For decades, we've basically been sold this one-size-fits-all model for what achievement looks like.
And that model is all about speaking up, speaking fast, working in groups, having that high energy.
Exactly. So what we need to do is understand first, where did that model even come from? Then, what does the science, the neurology, the psychology actually tell us? And then, most importantly,
The practical side.
the practical side. How can you, if you're a quieter personality, reshape your life and your career? Not by pretending to be someone you're not, but by really learning to use the strengths you already have.
To really get our heads around how deep this bias runs, I think we have to start somewhere really unexpected with one of the most powerful symbols of American courage there is, Rosa Parks.
It's the perfect place to start because when you think of that moment, Rosa Parks, on that bus in Montgomery, 1955, refusing to give up her seat, your mind, it just naturally creates an image, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You picture someone
No.
stately,
Yeah.
bold, radiating this confident defiance. You kind of assume she was a born leader.
We retrofit this image of a fiery, maybe even outspoken personality onto all of our heroes. It's what we expect.
We assume she must have been a natural alpha, right? Someone who was comfortable with confrontation, who could lead from the front, maybe give a rousing speech.
But the reality, if you actually dig into the historical records,
Right.
into what the people who knew her said, it's so much more surprising. When she passed away in 2005, the obituaries, they painted a totally different picture. They consistently described her as soft-spoken.
Soft-spoken.
Soft-spoken, sweet, timid, even small in her physical presence. The focus wasn't on some fiery personality. It was on her radical humility and her quiet fortitude.
Okay, wait. Timid and courageous.
Yeah.
Shy and having the iron will to start a movement that would define a generation.
See?
In our modern world, those things sound like complete contradictions. We're
Yeah.
taught that to have power, you have to project power.
We are, and that's because we've been trained to mistake volume for strength. But that no from Rosa Parks. That single word wasn't some, spontaneous burst of extroverted defiance.
It was planned.
Not planned, but prepared. It was the result of years of quiet, steady, persistent commitment. She'd been an active foot soldier for the NAACP for over a decade.
Doing what exactly?
The unglamorous work. Diligently organizing records, mentoring young people, working tirelessly behind the scenes, her friends, her colleagues. They sought her out specifically because of her boundless outreach of her integrity, her character. Her courage was slow brewed. It was deep, not flashy.
So that's the burning question for this deep dive, isn't it?
Mhm.
How do we reconcile shy with courageous?
Mm-hmm.
Our mission is to give you, our listener, the historical background, the scientific foundation, and the real practical strategies to understand exactly how quiet people can lead, how they can avoid burnout from constantly having to perform, and how they can genuinely thrive by using their own unique powers. Powers of concentration, reflection, and deliberate action. Okay, so let's unpack the history here.
Mhm.
How do we get to a place where the quiet strength of a Rosa Parks seems so counterintuitive to us?
We have to go back about a century to America right around the turn of the 20th century.
This is where that massive cultural shift happens.
It's a fundamental transition. The historian Warren Sussman gave it the perfect name. The shift from the culture of character to the culture of personality.
And that's the moment our identity as Americans sort of move from the inside to the outside.
Precisely. From who you are to how you appear.
So tell us more about that first one, the culture of character. Before the age of the superstar salesman, what did the ideal person look like?
Before the 1900s, the ideal self was all about your inner world. Qualities like seriousness, discipline, honor, moral fiber. Virtue was measured by what you did in private when no one was watching.
It sounds like a world that really valued what we'd now call introverted virtues, self-control, reflection.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the self-help books of that era. There was one from 1899 called Character, the Grandest Thing in the World.
I love that title.
And it praises this timid little shop girl who secretly gives her tiny salary to a freezing beggar. Her virtue was tied not just to her generosity, but to the fact that she insisted on being anonymous. The goal was to be good, not to look good.
And the word personality, that wasn't really a thing back then.
The word itself existed, but it didn't mean what it means to us now. Social charm, charisma. That meaning didn't become widespread or important until the 20th century.
And then the world changes.
Yeah.
Industrialization, urbanization, everything just speeds up.
Exactly. America shifts from a rural, production-based economy to an urban one based on management and, crucially, sales.
Right, so people move from these small towns where everyone knows their family, knows their character.
To big, anonymous cities where you suddenly have to prove yourself over and over again to total strangers.
You have to sell yourself.
You have to sell yourself. And the measure of a person shifts from that inner virtue to your outer magnetism. The new role you have to play is that of a performer. Americans became completely captivated by people who were bold, magnetic, and, entertaining.
And there's one person who perfectly embodies and really sells this whole cultural evolution.
Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie.
His personal story is the story of the nation in miniature. He starts out as this incredibly fretful, tongue-tied farm boy, just crippled by anxiety.
Afraid of everything, I read. Public speaking, talking to a woman he liked, even thunder.
Yeah. But he noticed something in college. The students who won the speaking contests, they were the ones everyone saw as leaders. So he made it his life's mission to transform himself into a public speaking champion.
And he didn't just transform himself, he basically wrote the instruction manual for everyone else.
He did. This is where self-help as a genre just completely pivots. The old models like the Pilgrim's Progress from way back, that was all about restraint, humility, noble character.
The inner stuff.
The inner stuff.
Yeah.
By the 1920s, that was out. Carnegie's books and all the ones that followed, they shifted entirely to outer charm.
It became about technique. How to stand, what to say, how to project this idea of charisma.
The manuals literally told readers to create a personality because the new philosophy was simple. Personality is power. You weren't valued for what you knew anymore, but for your ability to command a room.
And the new media landscape, movies, radio just poured gasoline on this fire.
Oh, absolutely. The 1920s and 30s, you get the rise of Hollywood. You have these new aspirational figures, movie stars, and the press described them with words like magnetic, fascinating, dominant. These were the new role models.
And of course, advertising and business immediately weaponized this new anxiety.
Immediately. Early ads were so straightforward. Here's our product. It's good. But the new personality-driven ads, they framed the consumer as a performer who was constantly suffering from stage fright.
And the product was the cure for your stage fright.
The product was your rescue from social failure. There's this one Woodbury soap ad from 1922. It is just the perfect, chilling example of this new anxiety.
What did it say?
The headline warned, all around you, people are judging you silently. Just think about the psychological weight of that. It tells you you're always on stage. You're always being evaluated. And not for your moral character, but for your performance, your looks, your social grace, your charisma. And if you fail, you will be judged. Silently, but severely. That pressure, that is the foundation of the extrovert ideal.
Okay, so we've got the history, the cultural shift. Now let's get into the human hardware. What does the science of temperament actually tell us about the difference between introverts and extroverts?
That's a great question.
Is there, one single definition that all psychologists agree on?
The short answer is no, not really. Personality psychology can be a bit messy. You have different models, like the Big Five, for instance, where introversion is sometimes just defined as a lack of something.
A lack of extroversion.
A lack of assertiveness or sociability, yeah. Which is, defining something by what it isn't. It's not super helpful.
Right, so what's the common ground? What do they all agree on?
The core agreement that underpins almost all modern psychology is this. Introverts and extroverts differ in the level of outside stimulation they need to function at their best, to feel just right.
So this isn't about being shy. It's about how your nervous system is wired.
Exactly. It's about responsiveness. For introverts, their nervous system feels just right, with less input. They get their satisfaction from focused, quiet stuff, sipping wine with one close friend, getting lost in a good book, solving a really hard puzzle by themselves.
Because they get overstimulated easily.
Very easily. A psychologist once put it perfectly. He said for introverts, other people are very arousing. 100 people are way more stimulating than 100 books.
That makes so much sense. It explains why a big networking event can feel like running a marathon, even if you like the people.
Totally. Whereas extroverts in that same quiet environment, they're understimulated, they're craving that extra bang, they seek out new people, risk-taking, loud music, because they need that higher level of input to get into their optimal zone.
A lot of people listening are probably wondering, well, what if I'm a bit of both?
Then you're probably an ambivert, which is where most people actually land on the spectrum. Even Carl Jung, who, really popularized these terms, he said almost a century ago, there is no such thing as a pure extrovert or a pure introvert. Such a man would be in the lunatic asylum.
We all stretch.
We all stretch and adapt, but we still have a kind of biological home base that we tend to return to.
Okay, let's talk about that biological home base. This brings us to Jerome Kagan's huge long-term research on infants. This is where we can actually see temperament being built from the ground up.
Kagan's work is absolutely pivotal. It shows the biology behind it all. He took 4-month-old babies and exposed them to a standard set of new, unfamiliar things.
And not people. Right. It was like objects and sound.
Exactly. That's a key point. It wasn't social. It was stuff like recorded voices, colorful mobiles, the smell of alcohol on a cotton swab, a balloon popping. He was testing their raw sensitivity to novelty.
And what did he find?
He found that about 20% of the babies were what he called high reactive.
High reactive.
Yeah. When they saw or heard these new things, they cried their lungs out, they pumped their little arms and legs, they got really distressed. And Kagan made a very bold prediction.
Which was?
That these highly reactive babies were the ones who were most likely to grow up to be quiet, reflective, careful adults. The classic introverts.
And the other babies, the low reactive ones.
That was about 40% of them. They were the opposite. They stayed quiet, placid, barely moved. And his prediction was they'd become the relaxed, confident, spontaneous extroverts.
And did it hold up?
Over the long term, his data showed he was right. The high reactive group tended to become the serious, thoughtful introverts.
So what is the actual mechanism in the brain that connects how a baby reacts to a smelly Q-tip to whether an adult likes parties?
It all seems to come down to the amygdala.
The brain's emotional switchboard.
Exactly. It's in the limbic system, and its job is to be the alarm bell. It instantly detects anything new or threatening and triggers a reaction. Kagan's theory was that these high-reactive babies were just born with a more excitable amygdala. For them, any novelty, even a balloon pop, registers as a major event and kicks off a stress response.
So an introvert finds a cocktail party draining not because they're antisocial, but because the constant novelty, new faces, overlapping conversations, real-time processing is just pushing that highly reactive amygdala into overdrive.
You've got it. They are just fundamentally more sensitive to their environment. And this connects directly to another important concept, the highly sensitive person, or HSP.
Okay, so HSP. That gets used a lot, sometimes interchangeably with introvert, but they're not exactly the same thing, are they?
They're not, but there's a huge overlap. About 70% of highly sensitive people are introverts. HSPs are really defined by their depth of processing.
What does that mean in practice?
It means they're more likely to be, say, pleasantly overwhelmed by beauty, a complex piece of music, a stunning building. But that same deep processing means they're also more deeply affected by negative things. They might feel physically sickened by violence on screen, they have a very strong conscience, and they often feel really nervous when they're being evaluated, like in a job interview.
So the same wiring that gives them this incredible depth and empathy also makes them more susceptible to overload and anxiety.
It's a package deal. The trade-off for noticing subtleties that others miss is that the world can become an overwhelming place much more quickly.
Let's shift from sensitivity to what drives us, motivation. Because the wiring also changes how we chase our goals.
Right, and we can really see this difference when we look at the role of dopamine.
The reward chemical.
The reward chemical. Extroverts are basically characterized by high reward sensitivity. They are powerfully motivated by chasing goals that promise, money, status, social validation.
So they get a bigger dopamine hit from the chase.
A much bigger rush. That buzz they feel from the pursuit and the capture of a reward is stronger. It makes them more action-oriented. They'll jump on an assignment quickly, make fast decisions. They thrive on risk and competition. They're wired for excitement.
And the introverted brain, how does it handle rewards?
The introverted brain is less focused on that immediate reward buzz and more focused on processing complexity and avoiding bad outcomes. They pay much closer attention to warning signals. They're better at regulating those feelings of excitement or desire, which is a great defense mechanism against downside risk.
Which means they work more slowly, more deliberately.
Yes. They're focused on thoroughness over speed. And interestingly, they tend to be relatively immune to the big lures of like massive wealth and fame.
This has to have real-world consequences, especially in a high-stakes field like finance.
Oh, huge consequences. The data is pretty striking. There are studies showing that people with a specific gene variant linked to introversion and sensitivity take about 28% less financial risk than their peers.
28%, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And even more telling, in complex financial games, the kind that require sophisticated decision-making, not just luck, these cautious individuals consistently outperform their more impulsive peers.
Why? Because they're not blinded by the dopamine rush of a potential big win.
Yeah.
They actually think before they leap.
That's exactly it. The introvert's persistence, which is driven by this deep need for accuracy and getting it right, it often turns out to be a much more reliable asset in a complex world than the extrovert's thrill of the chase.
Okay, so even though the science clearly shows these benefits of caution and depth, the charismatic ideal is still king. So let's look at how that ideal shows up in the real world, starting with, well, the master of charisma himself, Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins is the ultimate embodiment of the culture of personality. I mean, his Unleash the Power Within seminars, they are these high-octane sensory experiences designed specifically to blast you out of any introverted comfort zone you might have.
I've read descriptions of them. The room is kept freezing cold to match his high energy, and the whole atmosphere is just maximum stimulation. People are dancing on chairs. There are tribal beats. Everyone's chanting, yes, yes, yes.
It's deliberately overwhelming. And Robbins himself, he's a giant 6'7", he projects this overwhelming energy and superiority from the stage. His core message is the extrovert ideal distilled. Knowledge is useless without action. You have to radiate energy. You have to constantly sell yourself.
He talks about getting into a superior mind state, like a sales pitch against self-doubt, isn't it? A constant push outward, away from your inner world.
That's a perfect way to put it. He sells the idea that salesmanship and high-energy performance are the highest forms of leadership. And the audience, having paid a lot of money, they're so ready to buy into that. They cheer like crazy when he even hints at running for president. They're there to learn how to bottle that energy and project it.
And this philosophy, it's not just in motivational seminars. It is baked into the institutions that are supposed to be training our future leaders, like Harvard Business School.
HBS is like a giant factory for extroverts. The entire culture is built on constant, forceful, verbal contribution.
The gladiatorial amphitheaters, as they're called.
Exactly. A full 50% of a student's grade, not to mention their social standing, depends on talking. Talking often and talking forcefully. If you're quiet, you're not just missing out, you are actively failing the culture.
And that puts a huge strain on students who are more naturally thoughtful, like the example of Don Chen, who just wants to wait until he has something genuinely insightful to say.
He's in an impossible spot. These students are constantly worrying, is my voice loud enough? Have I elbowed my way into the conversation enough times today? The system forces them to believe that fast talking is a stand-in for smart thinking.
And this is where the whole logic of it falls apart, according to the research.
Completely. Study after study shows that talking more is not correlated with having better ideas.
Not at all.
Not at all. Researchers found that the students who jumped in first and talked the most were consistently rated as the smartest by their peers. But their actual suggestions and even their math SAT scores were no better than the quieter students.
So the institution is rewarding the performance of intelligence, not actual intelligence.
It's rewarding volume over substance, and it creates this self-fulfilling prophecy. The graduates go into a corporate world that now believes verbal fluency is the most important predictor of success. It's why we live in a world where you have to make a 10-slide PowerPoint deck just to make a simple suggestion to your boss.
This brings us back full circle to the power of the quiet leader. The people who succeed, not in spite of their nature, but because of it.
And we're back to Rosa Parks. Her no was so powerful because it was deliberate. It was rooted in years of quiet work and a reputation for boundless integrity. Movement leaders sought her out, not because she was a charismatic speaker, but because she was a dedicated foot soldier with unimpeachable character.
We see this archetype throughout history. I mean, think of Moses. He definitely would have failed at Harvard Business School.
Oh, he would have flunked out. The Book of Numbers describes him as very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. He was famously inarticulate, possibly had a stutter. He would have been terrified in those gladiatorial classrooms.
But he led millions of people. So how did he use his introverted strengths to do that?
He led by maximizing what he was good at. He went up the mountain for solitude and deep reflection. He came back with wisdom that he had written down carefully on stone tablets. And he compensated for his shyness by having his brother, Aaron, act as his public voice. People followed him because his words, when they finally came, were thoughtful and deep, not because he was a dynamic showman.
And this preference for listening and thinking first, it translates into better results in modern business,
Yep.
especially with proactive teams. Adam Grant's research on this is fascinating.
Grant's work is so important here. He looked at teams where the employees were full of ideas and took initiative. And his research showed that introverted leaders were 20% more likely to actually implement those employee suggestions than extroverted leaders were.
And what was the bottom line result of that?
The result was that team performance was 24% better under the introverted leader.
24% better. That is a massive difference.
A huge operational advantage.
So what's the mechanism there? Why are they better listeners in that specific context?
It's simple, really. Introverts are just less interested in dominating the social situation. They're more willing to listen to complex ideas without feeling the need to immediately put their own stamp on things. They create a space where people feel genuinely heard.
And that encourages more ideas.
It creates a virtuous cycle of proactivity. Whereas the extroverted leader, trying to be dynamic and drive their vision forward, might accidentally shut down good ideas from their proactive team members.
Because they're so busy putting their own stamp on things.
Exactly. And the workers can start to feel like their input doesn't matter, so they just become passive. The conclusion isn't that introverts need to act more like extroverts. It's that in many cases, extroverted leaders could benefit from adopting a more reserved, quiet style.
Okay, so from leadership, let's move to creativity. Because here we run into another big pillar of the extrovert ideal. What's been called the new groupthink.
Yes, the new groupthink. This is the pervasive belief that all good ideas, all innovation, all problem solving must come from a collaborative, gregarious place.
You see it everywhere. Those motivational posters in offices. None of us is as smart as all of us.
And it has literally reshaped our physical world.
The open plan office, the bane of so many people's existence.
It is. It's the physical form of forced collaboration. We've seen this relentless attack on privacy at work. Over 70% of us work in open offices now. The average personal space has shrunk from 500 square feet in the 70s to just 200 today.
And it starts even earlier, in schools. Yeah. All the desks are in pods now. Group learning.
Yes. The underlying message from childhood on up is that working alone is unproductive, maybe even antisocial.
But if we look at real world-changing innovation, does it actually happen in a big group huddle?
Very often, no. And the perfect person to look at here is Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple.
Right. The popular myth is that the Apple I computer was a product of the collective genius of the collaborative homebrew computer club.
And the club was, without a doubt, a huge source of inspiration for him. Wozniak himself said attending that first meeting was one of the most important nights of his life. But what did he do right after he got that spark of inspiration?
Did he start a brainstorming session?
He did not. When it was time to do the hard, complex design work, Wozniak was always alone.
He went back to his cubicle.
He went back to his cubicle at Hewlett-Packard. He'd get there at 6:30 in the morning before anyone else. He'd read these thick technical manuals, and he designed the entire computer in his head. He called that time of quiet midnights and solitary sunrises the biggest high ever, the breakthrough moment. That was him alone.
And this lines up with decades of research into what actually fuels high-level creativity.
It really does. There were these classic studies done at Berkeley from the 50s to the 60s. They tracked highly creative architects, scientists, writers, and they found that the most spectacularly creative people tended to be socially poised introverts.
Socially poised introverts, what does that mean exactly?
It means they had social skills, they could function perfectly well in a group, but they were not of an especially sociable or participative temperament. They consistently described themselves as independent, individualistic. A lot of them said they were shy and solitary as teenagers. For them, creativity required deep, uninterrupted concentration, alone time.
This brings us to the spectacular failure of the most famous group creativity technique of all time.
Brainstorming.
Invented by the ad exec, Alex Osborne.
Osborne created it with these 4 simple rules, right? No judgment, be freewheeling, go for quantity, and build on other people's ideas. He made these huge claims about how effective it was.
But the science, for decades, has just systematically taken those claims apart.
Completely. One of the most famous studies was back in 1963 with researchers at 3M. The results were crystal clear. The participants produced significantly more ideas and ideas of equal or higher quality when they worked alone than when they worked in a group following Osborne's brainstorming rules.
So both quantity and quality go down in a group session.
Yes. And this has been proven again and again for 40 years. An organizational psychologist named Adrian Furnham summed it up best. He said, if you have talented and motivated people, they should be encouraged to work alone when creativity or efficiency is the highest priority. Performance gets worse as the group gets bigger.
So why? Why does brainstorming fail so badly? I mean, the no judgment rule sounds great in theory.
There are three main reasons it fails. The first is what's called social loafing.
People sit back and let others do the work.
Exactly. In a big group, you feel less individual responsibility, so you can just kind of coast.
Okay, what's the second?
The second is production blocking. This is a huge mechanical flaw. Only one person can talk at a time. So if you have a brilliant idea while someone else is talking, you have to just sit there and wait. And by the time it's your turn, you might have forgotten it or the conversation's moved on.
So you self-censor.
You self-censor. And the third reason, which gets back to the whole extrovert ideal, is evaluation apprehension.
The fear of looking stupid.
The fear of looking stupid. Even with a no judgment rule, people are afraid of looking impractical or unoriginal in front of their peers. It's a powerful inhibitor. The funny thing is, participants in these studies often think the brainstorming session was effective.
Because it feels good socially.
Right. The main benefit is social bonding, not creative output.
And the great irony here is that the things we point to as examples of successful collaboration, like Linux or Wikipedia, we use them as an excuse to tear down our office walls.
But that's where we get it so wrong. Online collaboration works precisely because it's asynchronous. It allows for deep individual work that then gets added to the whole. A programmer writes complex code alone in their office. A Wikipedia editor spends hours researching alone before they post. These things succeed because they create a kind of solitude all its own.
And we mistakenly applied the lessons from that quiet, deep, digital world to our loud, distracting, face-to-face open offices.
Which is the perfect recipe for killing deep, concentrated work.
Let's widen the lens now and look outside the Western world, because these values are not universal. Robert McCrae's personality map of the world really highlights this.
It does. McCrae's map, which is based on huge amounts of personality data, it basically colors North America and Europe dark gray for high extroversion, and much of Asia is light gray for relatively high introversion. Americans consistently rank as one of the most extroverted populations on Earth.
And that difference completely changes what kind of behavior is rewarded starting in childhood.
Oh, completely. Take the Chinese cultural context. In many Asian societies, a child who is shy, sensitive, and quiet is highly prized. They're often seen as more likely to be leaders. They're called dongxi.
Which means?
It translates roughly to understanding, and it's a term of praise for a child who is thoughtful and shows restraint.
That is the polar opposite of the North American experience, where a shy kid is often seen as having a problem that needs to be fixed.
Exactly. The value system is flipped. Chinese high school students, for example, tend to say they want friends who are humble and altruistic. American students say they want friends who are cheerful, enthusiastic, and sociable.
This has to be driven by that cultural focus on the group over the individual, what's often called relationship honoring.
It is. Western culture is built around the individual self-expression, self-promotion. In a more collective culture, the highest social virtue is behaving with restraint, listening carefully, and putting the harmony of the group above your own desires. It just reduces friction.
And this difference is so deep, it even shows up in our brains, according to some neuroscience.
There was this one incredible fMRI study that compared Japanese and American brains. When the American participants were shown pictures of dominant figures or poses, their pleasure centers lit up.
Okay, that makes sense.
But when the Japanese participants were shown images of subordinate or harmonious poses, their pleasure centers lit up. What a Westerner might see as submission is experienced as a deep internal reward for maintaining social cohesion.
But when these two value systems crash into each other, like in American business schools, the pressure to conform to the extrovert ideal must be intense.
It's immense. You see these classes, like one taught by a Professor Ni, that are designed to teach Asian students to be more open and make more conversations so they can succeed in American business. One student, Raj, felt so much pressure he had to lie on his back and practice vocalizing vowels just to learn how to speak louder.
Wow. He had to physically train himself to overcome a cultural default of quiet modesty.
Yes, in order to fit into the Western corporate world.
Shifting to a philosophical giant, Mahatma Gandhi might be the most powerful example of introverted leadership through restraint.
Gandhi was, by his own account, constitutionally shy. He said he was almost cripplingly afraid of people. He found it incredibly difficult to speak off the cuff. He'd often write down his thoughts for a meeting and then be too terrified to actually read them out loud.
So how on earth did this intensely shy man lead a country to independence?
His power came from restraint, from satyagraha, which means firmness in the pursuit of truth. For Gandhi, strength was about focusing all of your energy on the ultimate moral goal and refusing to get sidetracked by what he called unnecessary skirmishes.
So he didn't waste energy on small fights.
Never. For example, when his subcaste kicked him out, he refused to fight them to be let back in. He just called it non-resistance and kept his distance. And his self-control was so powerful that years later, those same people actually came around to help his political work.
So he didn't see his shyness as a weakness to be fixed. He saw it as a tool.
Precisely. He wrote that his shyness was his shield and buckler. It forced him to retreat, to reflect, to grow. He said, "It helps me in my discernment of truth." He knew that a lot of impulsive talking is just a waste of energy that distracts you from what really matters.
Let's bring this back to the world of finance, connecting back to our earlier discussion about dopamine and risk, and how that quiet caution was so critical during the 2008 financial crisis.
The financial observer, Boykin Curry, noted that in the years leading up to the crash, the entire culture of Wall Street had changed. The system started promoting the most aggressive, reward-seeking risk-takers, because in a rising market, their short-term profits made them look like geniuses.
And what happened to the cautious types, the introverts?
They were increasingly intimidated. Their caution was dismissed as fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD. They got passed over for promotions, and critically, they lost their hold on capital. The system's bias against caution is part of what created the conditions for that massive failure.
This is where someone like Seth Klarman, the hedge fund manager, really stands out.
Klarman is the living embodiment of the quiet leader in finance. He consistently beat the market by doing the exact opposite of everyone else. He avoided unnecessary risk. He would often keep huge portions of his fund in cash, just patiently waiting for the right opportunity. He was one of the only ones sticking to a cautious and seemingly paranoid message right before the crash.
So his success wasn't about having a higher IQ. It was about his temperament, his ability to resist the herd mentality.
Exactly. It's what Warren Buffett was talking about when he said, success in investing doesn't correlate with IQ. What you need is the temperament to control the urges that get other people into trouble. An introvert's natural tendency to think before acting, to digest all the information, and their relative immunity to that dopamine buzz of a quick win, that's what makes them invaluable when the stakes are high and impulse control is everything.
So we've established that temperament has these deep roots in biology and in culture. The big question for anyone listening is, okay, so how much control do I actually have over this? Am I just stuck with the brain I was born with?
We have a lot of control, but within limits. Dr. Carl Schwartz calls it the rubber band theory of personality.
The rubber band theory.
Yeah. We're elastic, we can stretch ourselves, we can act out of character, but only up to a point before we sort of snap back to our natural state.
And he proved this by going back to Kagan's original high reactive subjects when they were adults.
He did. Years later, he put those same people into an fMRI scanner, and their amygdalae still reacted more strongly to new faces than the low-reactive groups did. The biological signature of their temperament was still there, even if they had learned over the years to be perfectly charming and socially skilled adults.
So we can learn to perform, but the engine underneath never really changes its settings. It's like Bill Gates is never going to become Bill Clinton, no matter how many charisma coaches he hires.
That's the perfect analogy. Our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, can absolutely override the amygdala's alarm bells and let us stretch. But that stretching takes a ton of energy.
This is where Professor Brian Little's free trait theory is so useful. We can act out of character, but we do it in the service of what he calls our core personal projects.
And Little himself is the best example of this. He is an extreme introvert, but he's famous for being this passionate, high-energy, totally captivating lecturer. He can do it because teaching students, lighting that fire in them, is one of his core personal projects. It matters that much to him.
But he pays a price for it.
Oh, he pays a huge price. He famously admits that he sometimes has to go hide in the restroom stalls between lectures just to recharge his social battery.
That's such a relatable detail. It really confirms that the performance, even when you love it, is draining.
It's exhausting. And that brings us to the most essential tool for managing this, the restorative niche.
Okay, define restorative niche for us. How can people use this idea right now?
A restorative niche is the place. It can be a physical place or just a block of time where you go to get back to your true self, to recharge after all that stretching. It could be as simple as choosing to send an email instead of having a face-to-face meeting, or scheduling 15 minutes of total silence in your car between sales calls.
So it's about making an agreement with yourself and the world.
Little calls it the free trade agreement. We agree to act out of character some of the time, as long as we're allowed to be our true selves the rest of the time in our niche.
This is so critical for navigating relationships, especially when you have different temperaments clashing. Let's look at that classic conflict. Greg, the extrovert who loves to socialize, and Emily, the introvert who finds it all draining.
Greg and Emily have totally opposite conflict styles. Extroverts like Greg are often confrontive copers. They're comfortable with a direct, even argumentative disagreement. They feel better after they've cleared the air.
While introverts like Emily are conflict avoiders, they get overwhelmed by that aggressive energy.
Yes. Greg feels lonely and weak when he's isolated. Emily feels completely steamrolled by constant social demands, like big dinner parties.
And the key to solving this is understanding how introverts process social information, which was shown so well in Dr. Matthew Lieberman's study on conversational multitasking.
That study is fantastic. He had introverts and extroverts chat on the phone, and in the live conversation, the extroverts were way better at figuring out if the person on the other end actually liked talking to them. So at first, it looked like extroverts were just better social decoders.
And what?
There's a but. There's a big but. When he let the introverts listen to a recording of that same conversation later, without the pressure of having to listen, think, and talk all at the same time, their ability to read the social cues was exactly the same as the extroverts.
Wow. So it's a processing issue.
It's a multitasking issue. A real-time conversation is a massive cognitive load for an introvert. When Emily is at that big dinner party, her nervous system is just on fire trying to process everything. It's no wonder she leaves exhausted and feeling like she missed things.
And then there's the communication style. Greg likes to vent his anger, believing in catharsis.
Ah, the myth of catharsis. That's one of the most stubborn and damaging ideas in pop psychology.
That venting makes you feel better.
Scores of studies show the exact opposite. Venting your anger doesn't release it like steam from a kettle. It fuels it. It's like pouring lighter fluid on a fire. We're always better off trying to regulate that anger rather than just expressing it raw.
So what's the solution for a couple in a heated argument? The Cobra and the Swami story offers a path forward for someone like John, the introvert with the fiery spouse.
Right. The Swami tells the cobra he can't bite people anymore, but he's still allowed to hiss. John learned that when his passionate wife was yelling, maybe about the kitchen being a mess, she wasn't actually a physical threat. He learned to mentally take the tone out of the equation.
He focused on the meaning, not the volume.
Exactly. He ignored the assault on his senses and focused on the real message underneath. Respect me, pay attention to me, love me. By hearing that, he could respond calmly to the issue without his own nervous system going into shutdown.
And this lets Greg and Emily stop fighting over the number of parties they go to and start negotiating the format.
Precisely. Instead of arguing about 10 big, formal dinner parties a year, they shifted to a buffet style. This lets people break off into smaller, more casual groups. Greg can be in the middle of it all, getting his energy, and Emily can hang out on the edges, having deeper one-on-one conversations, and she can easily step away for a few minutes into her restorative niche without disappearing.
This change in perspective is maybe most important when it comes to parenting an introverted child, especially if you're an extroverted parent.
Oh, it's vital. You have to remember that a child's caution in a new situation is not the same as them being antisocial. The child is recoiling from novelty, from overstimulation, not from other people.
Like the story of Joyce and her sensitive daughter, Isabel, on the playground.
Joyce is an extrovert, and her first instinct was to just push Isabel into the mix because she was afraid her daughter couldn't make friends.
But she learned to step back.
She had to. She started observing and saw that Isabel had incredible empathy. She'd spent hours trying to understand why a class bully was acting the way he was. So Joyce learned to accept Isabel's quiet nature and, critically, to coach her on specific playground strategies instead of just saying, oh, don't worry about it.
The key lesson is to help them find social roles that feel comfortable.
Yes. For a group project, help them claim the role of the note-taker or the researcher. It gives them a defined, comfortable way to contribute. And remember, an introverted child just needs one or two good friends, not to be the most popular kid in school. And most of all, they need that quiet time to decompress. They'll often open up with their deepest thoughts hours later when the house is quiet, during bedtime.
Right. Like the story of David Weiss, the shy kid who became a drummer. His parents didn't force him to play football. They embraced his passion, which let him use his quiet focus to become a master at something. Yeah. We started this deep dive with a contradiction. How can you be both quiet and courageous? And I think we found that this huge societal focus on extroversion, it's a pretty recent invention, culturally speaking.
It is. It was amplified by people like Dale Carnegie and then baked into our institutions like business schools that started rewarding volume over actual insight.
But the science is so clear. Introversion isn't a flaw. It's a different and very powerful operating system. It's defined by reflection, by persistence, by being more sensitive to the world around you, and by having a healthy resistance to impulse.
Whether you look at the quiet fortitude of Rosa Parks, the deliberate restraint of Gandhi, or the calculated caution of a financial mind like Seth Klarman, you see that true, lasting power often comes from that inner strength and measured action, not from being the loudest person in the room.
So the core takeaway for you, listening to this, has to be the value of knowing yourself and being authentic. You can stretch your personality, sure, for those core projects that really matter, but you have to build and honor your restorative niches.
The real game changer is when you stop spending all your energy trying to imitate the extrovert ideal and instead focus on harnessing your specific gifts, whether that's deep thinking, powerful listening, or just resisting the madness of the crowd.
And if you're a leader, a manager, a parent, remember that up to half the people you're responsible for might be introverts. Their best work isn't going to happen in a noisy open office or a spontaneous brainstorming session.
Give them the solitude, give them the privacy, give them the focused time they need to do what they do best, which is deliver deep, thoughtful, high-quality work. We have to shift from valuing the performance to valuing the contribution.
It reminds me of that old parable. A man gets to heaven and he asks St. Peter to show him the greatest general who ever lived. And see, Peter points to this very simple, humble-looking man.
And the first man is confused. He protests, wait, I knew that man on earth. He wasn't a general, he was just a cobbler.
And St. Peter looks at him and says, I know that. But if he had been a general, he would have been the greatest of them all.
And that's the challenge for all of us, isn't it? In our jobs, in our families, in our communities, to look out for those cobblers, the quiet people with immense, unshowy potential.
And to make sure that their incredible talents aren't stifled by a world that's just too obsessed with charisma and constant performance. The goal is to identify and nurture that quiet power in ourselves and in others, and let that strength be deployed, whether it's on a global stage or just alone at a desk doing brilliant work.